Boris Johnson has indeed resigned with immediate effect, straight away after getting his honours list published, which is also worth discussing today. That's also something that's definitely in the news, at the very least. And he's been forced out over the Partygate report, apparently. Two by-elections coming up, indeed. Who contests them, we don't know yet. Should be interesting to see who it is. And I have a feeling, I think I know who might indeed be on the ballot, potentially, for the Mid-Bedfordshire by-election. Interesting, right? So let's go over what Boris has said. So he's been forced out of the Partygate report. He's been stepped down with an MP with immediate effect after receiving the Partygate report specifically. So he received it today, and then there was going to be some time for him to look over it before they were going to make the judgment at the end of it. Although apparently that's not the case, because he's not going to bother having to go to the Privileges Committee's results. He's just going to quit regardless, because he knows that he's screwed. Right? He knows that he's completely screwed up and that he did screw up. Although he's never going to admit that he screwed up. In a statement, he said, "They have still not produced a shred of evidence that I knowingly or recklessly misled the Commons, apart from, all of the words that came out of your mouth, Boris." In evidence given to the committee in March, Mr. Johnson admitted misleading Parliament but denied doing it on purpose. In the statement issued after he stepped down on Friday evening, the former Prime Minister said, "I did not lie, and I believe that in the hearts of the committee know it. They know perfectly well that when I spoke in the Commons, I was saying what I believed sincerely to be true, what I had brief to say like any other minister," which of course is complete nonsense, because of course you wrote the fucking rules. Boris, you should know what the rules are, and you should know whether or not you are indeed breaking them. It's just, honestly, I mean, he's kept the grift going so long, right? He's kept the grift going so long, he can't stop now. All of the hashtag back Boris people who've just continued lapping up all of the shit that he's come out with, they're not going to ever move away from him, just like the MAGA hats don't with Trump. They're never going to admit that they've had their wallets inspected. They never cared about them. He never cared about policy. He never cared about the party. He never cared about the country. He only ever cared about one thing. That's himself, right? His money and his ego. That's all he ever cared about. He wanted to be Prime Minister, and he would literally say or do anything that it took to be able to get there. He really did. Literally, that's all he ever cared about. And the back Boris people are going to still think that it was forced out by the woke Remainer, woke blob, like the blob has got to him or something like that, whatever it might be. And, it is what it is. They will still continue to have their wallets inspected. But, he still has eyes on the top job, apparently, because that's all he cares about. It's not the party. It's not the people who voted for him. It's just about being Prime Minister for the sake of being Prime Minister, so that he can massage his ego in that manner. That's all it's about. That's all it ever has been about. But that's why we had the resignation honours list posted today, I think, so that he could get it finalised now that he knows that he's not going to be in Parliament for the next election. Theoretically, right? Theoretically, at this point, we don't think he's going to be in Parliament at the next election. He could be, though. There's nothing saying that he can't be re-elected. It would be incredible if he did, because there's a whole other side to this story that we've not touched on yet. So in the allies in the honours list, he had a bunch of MPs who were going to get knighted, including Simon Clarke and Jacob Rees-Mogg. The guy who lied to the Queen about proroguing Parliament, Jacob Rees-Mogg. He, as Leader of the House of Commons, he is now going to get knighted by the fucking king. Literally, I lied to your dead mum for political gain. Can you please make me a knight of the realm? So he scrapped a bunch of the peerages to avoid by-elections specifically, including Nadine Dorries, who was on the list. There's a bunch of other people, just people on the list who were, other friends of his, people of the communication media, like Gutahari, Jack Doyle, the guy from Talk TV, Ross Kemsel. So, it's hardly like these are honours that people really deserve. But then again, since when has anyone ever deserved getting a knighthood under this administration, and any administrations for the last fucking 40 years at this point? The Lord system, there's no, people trying to pretend there's due process that needs to be adhered to. They fucking live in fantasy land, of course, because there never has been and there never was. For the same reason when Tony Blair didn't make any honours list appointments, because it was in the middle of the Cash for Honour scandal, so Gordon Brown nominated like fucking 50 or some shit. So there's never been any precedent for any of this. So the fact that they can just do what the fuck they want, yes, fair enough. It's always been rewarding your mates for loyalty, and that's what's happened here with both the lists of people who've been given knighthoods and the people who've been given peerages. I mean, that's all it really is at this point. It's just handing out benefits to your mates. There was one interesting person who was tipped for a peerage before, right? This person, Nadine Dorries, is who I'm talking about. He was tipped for a peerage beforehand, but has not been given it. Basically, all the people who were MPs are now not being given peerages because that would mean that they would cause by-elections for the Conservative Party. But here's the thing, right? Nadine Dorries, one might speculate, has specifically not been given a peerage. Not because they don't want to avoid the by-election, because she has also stepped down today. She stepped down today. And she said on Talk TV earlier today specifically that she was given news early today that changed her mind about sticking around. Because of course, why would she stand down for a by-election if she's not going to be given a peerage? Why would they surely would want to avoid the by-election. Or she might want to leave it until the end of her parliamentary tenure, until the next election. Little old conspiracy theory me. The thing that she must have heard today, which changed her mind, must have been Boris Johnson deciding to step down having received the report. The only reason why she would step down now rather than at the end of the term is because she knows that Boris Johnson is quitting. There will be a by-election, and if CCHQ allow it, Boris Johnson could stand to be the candidate for the Conservative Party by-election for the constituency of Mid-Bedfordshire, and that's why she would have stepped down. She specifically stood down because she knows that Boris Johnson's toast in Uxbridge, he can't stand in Uxbridge because of the report that they've received from the Privileges Committee over the Partygate hearing. So she must have stepped down to allow Boris a shot into her seat. There's no other reason why she would do it now rather than later. Why it would be on the same day that the honours list has been announced, on the same day that he's received the Privileges Committee notice. There's no other explanation for this, surely. Obviously, of course, there's going to be this whole thing, there's going to be this whole conversation now about whether or not the Conservative Party even wants him back in the party. Have they moved on? The CDO certainly want him there. Boris Johnson's really put the cat amongst the pigeons because there's already a kind of internal, Boris Johnson-based civil war in the party about, what direction the party needs to actually go in now that we've got Rishi Sunak at the helm. The CDO clearly want Boris Johnson back as PM, but Boris Johnson's electoral toxin, hence why he was booted out of the party beforehand. So why would they give him the privilege of then continuing to stand as a MP again, knowing how electorally toxic, knowing how dodgy it looks for her to stand down, for him to be inserted into the new seat? So the Conservatives, not only have they been thrown huge curveballs by Boris Johnson over and over and over again, let's get clear, he's quite frankly, I admire the grift. I do admire Boris Johnson's incredibly perfectly executed grift. Again, it just shows he's a complete sociopath, really and truly. Doesn't care about anybody apart from himself, and it's very clear to everybody, which is funny to me. But he's so Machiavellian in the way that he does it. And honestly, it's like Nazi architecture, right? It's horrendous, but you kind of have to admire it. That he would just go through all of these processes, and then after screwing over Rishi Sunak by saying, yeah, have the WhatsApps, whatever, no scrutiny on my end, so I'll help bring down the Conservative Party who have ousted me basically out of spite, right? To then have this other thing going on in the background to try and insert himself back into the top job with the party split that's already there because of the Conservative Democratic Organisation that already exists to try and get him back in power. When now sit there, the party tearing themselves up because they know they're not winning the next election, and of course they have an ideological difference on the direction of the party, and on the leadership of the party, basically, then he's now giving them yet another headache by potentially making them look completely scandalous by him stepping down in shame, only to be then put up into an incredibly safe seat in mid Bedfordshire through some kind of tactical wrangling of the way the selection process works and the way that they've timed all the different ways in which people have stood down. It's honestly, it's absolutely wild. It's an absolutely wild situation that we've got going on here. And again, I admire the fact that they realize it's a game. All of the media people, all of the people who the liberal centrist types will be absolutely outraged by all of this. I'm like, no, of course isn't. In what way is any of this outrageous? This is not outrageous in the slightest. This is who Boris Johnson has always been, who has always proved us to be since time immemorial. Why should it ever change now? It's always been a complete farce. It's always been farcical, the way this stuff has been organised, and the fact that he was allowed to become prime minister because of the way in which the media demonised and character assassinated the only viable alternative. I'm like, yeah, fucking hell, centrists and liberals, you got exactly what you fucking wanted. You got exactly what you wanted, and this guy has proven time and time again that he's not fit for public office, that he does not have any scruples at all, and the media fucking bought it and refused to hold him accountable. But again, fair play to the guy. Fair play to the guy. He took they took advantage of every single possible opportunity he was given to step on everyone else's heads all the way up to the top, getting journalists beaten up, lying about whether he supported Brexit or not, doing it tactically to try and oust David Cameron at the time and oust Theresa May as well. Fair play to the guy. He knew the game and he played it well. So now I've got multiple by-elections for the Conservatives to get humiliated at again. Although the Nadine Dorries one is probably going to be a safe Conservative win, unless, of course, if Boris Johnson stands again, he might lose because people hate him so much. The possibilities are endless. This is the true banter timeline. We are now entering the perfect banter timeline properly. Oh my God, Rishi Sunak must be absolutely cursing because he's got to go through the COVID inquiry, given the fact that Boris Johnson's just kind of walked away from the party and lobbed a nuclear warhead behind him. And the thing is, what might even happen, I think I said about this before, I surmised that if CCHQ don't let him back into the party to stand as an MP again because of his toxicity, if Boris Johnson stands for Reform UK with a resurgent Nigel Farage, the next election could be an absolute mess. And don't think that Boris Johnson won't do it, because he will do it. He has no scruples, he has no loyalty. If he thinks he can find an in to try and demolish the party that demolished him, because it's clear that he's very happy to spitefully destroy the party now, regardless. If he doesn't get his way, being put on the ballot for Mid Bedfordshire to replace Nadine Dorries, why doesn't he just wait until why does he just become a member of Reform UK, become their cheerleader for the Boris faction? So other Tory MPs might defect. It could be, obviously this is all speculation. Obviously, this will all there's all speculation from my end, but if you're a Boris Johnson in this position, knowing what he's like, why wouldn't you do this? Why wouldn't you just take advantage of every single potential avenue that you have to, screw over the people that he's continually proved he's happily screwing over, continually and with great abandon, and also try and have a route for a resurgent political career? And if CCHQ turn him down to be an MP again in Mid Bedfordshire, against the wishes of the CDO and of probably the general public as well, the people who support him at the very least, and other MPs in the party like Jacob Rees-Mogg, etc., then why wouldn't he stand shoulder to shoulder with a Nigel Farage on their Get Brexit Done campaign, the real Brexit campaign for Reform UK? Farage is already tempted to return to politics. If he gets Boris Johnson on side, what the fuck happens to the Tories? It will be a mess. And we're in such a banter timeline at this point. You should not rule this shit out. You should not rule this shit out. As the architect of a current failing Brexit, Farage will want to put some ocean between them. I mean, that's possibly true, Big Al, but I think if there's one thing that both Boris Johnson and Nigel Farage have, is they're very happy to just put power over principles. Or put results over principles, I guess, right? Compromise on principles to get results, which I think Nigel Farage has done on plenty of occasions already. And I think if Farage could convince Boris Johnson of a better Brexit for him to stand for, I think Nigel Farage would be happy to use Boris Johnson as some kind of popularity candidate to launch back his own personal ambitions of being a member of Parliament. Because we all know, given how many times that Nigel Farage has stood for election, He really does want to be an MP out of all of this stuff. And I think he would happily compromise on their Brexit impasse between him and Boris, to use Boris's platform to catapult him into some theoretical position in the Commons, theoretical position to oust the Tories off the back of the Boris campaign. Because I think the Boris and Farage fan bases probably overlap quite a lot as well. Whether or not the Boris and Farage dislike each other or not, I think the fact their fan bases are shared, I think they could form some kind of alliance of convenience. Did I have 30 quid on Wes being the next Tory PM? I wouldn't put it past him. But Christian Wakeford going back across the other side of the aisle. I seriously doubt Farage wants to be an MP. It is too much work. He would rather just lob buns from the sidelines and slurp up the cash from right-wing grifters. No, if that's true, then why did he continue standing as an MP for UKIP? Why is he continually trying to win seats at elections where he knows he can't win seats? The fact that Douglas Carswell did better with him in elections shows that, he's really happy to continue to humiliate himself in electoral constituencies to try and become an MP. It's not about, why would he care about money? The guy's absolutely minted. He cares about ideology. That's why he's on GB News, not for the money, but to spread his opinion, spread his ideology. That's what he really cares about. And power, ideology and power. And so I think that, if he thought that, and because clearly the route to reform UK gaining some kind of power in this country, their route is this election or bust. It has to be this election, otherwise they're not getting back, because the Conservatives are really good at being able to rally and get back to a position they were previously, right? The Conservatives, you can never count them out. You can never count them out, apart from probably right now, as they really are just completely persona non grata as a party in general. I don't think you can ever really count the Conservatives out. So, what I do think is there is a potential alliance of convenience there for Farage to use that, given that I don't think there's any other route for Reform UK to become like a replacement for the Conservative Party, to try and fill the niche about where the Conservative Party have theoretically failed in the minds of the old Thatcherites and in the minds of the Brexiteers. I think if they can, because again, they know Boris Johnson is completely capricious and is very mercurial in his positions because he'll say anything to get elected. If they can use him for party political game, I think they would. I don't see why they wouldn't do it. The Tories are the most successful political party in the history of the world. They've won more elections than any other political party in any country ever. I mean, that's possibly true as well, Big Al. But, we shall see. We shall see. Anyway, well, Nadine Dorries, the person who was somewhat of the epicenter of this discussion, was on Talk TV today, talking with Vanessa Feltz. So it's worth looking at the potential justifications and see if we can kind of look into anything to see whether there's any potential for any more inquiry into what's going on here. If we can see if we can try and glean some information from what you said there. So let's have a watch.
Nadine, good afternoon.
Hi, Vanessa. Good afternoon. No, I'm not angry, Vanessa. I'm never angry. So it's sometimes a sadness in my life that I can't get riled about things. But no, I'm not angry. So the bottom line is really I'm doing my own show on Talk TV, and I write a column in the Daily Mail every Tuesday, which takes a lot more time than I ever thought it would do. Mm-hmm. And in fact, both do, Vanessa. I think you sit there all glamorous and present. It's actually hard work.
True.
And I've been slightly, I understand some of the criticisms I've received, and I've been slightly uncomfortable with the fact that I've been working like 7 days a week, and I'm also managing these outside jobs as well as my role as an MP. And the House of Lords thing was on the cards, and it's gone back to HOLAC for those are MPs to be.
Yeah, this very hard-working MP who had time to write home the column in the Mail and present on Talk TV. I'm sure the people of Mid Bedfordshire are desperately unhappy that they've lost their very, very hard-working MP of their area. Yeah, I'm really sure they're absolutely gutted to see her go.
elected or whatever. And I just thought, I think this is the time actually for me to stand down and for someone else to take over the reins of Mid. But I've been there 18 years.
But what happened between 10 o'clock this morning, Nadine, when you said with great confidence to our colleague Mike Graham, the last thing I want to do is trigger a by-election, and then by just about 10 to 4 this afternoon, you decided to do precisely that? You're a woman of such conviction. To see you switch like that in the course of just a few hours is quite shocking to most people who know you well and those who don't. So what happened during the course of today to change your mind?
I mean, she definitely is on the candidate for one of the dumbest MPs ever to exist, right? Do you remember fucking tennis pitches when she was the Secretary of State for Digital Culture, Media and Sport? Like, come on. Like, she's so fucking empty-headed. How she been a public servant for 18 years is fucking beyond me.
Well, I can't reveal everything, but so something significant did happen to change my mind. And, I'm not someone who's going to go, blabbing out what that was immediately. I need to,
Literally. Right out of the horse's mouth, right? Something big happened to change my mind today. Specifically today, something has changed her mind, right? What else could it possibly be? What else could it theoretically be for her to change her mind from this morning to right now? There's no other thing that makes any sense other than her making way so that Boris can stand again in her constituency for the by-election. Nothing else makes sense. The fact that she's being so secretive and so coy about it, because this was done before, this was 3 hours ago, this was before Boris Johnson announced that he'd resigned, right? So she couldn't say that then, but probably can say now. Does anyone have any other theories about what this could possibly be, other than her making way for Boris Johnson to get back into Parliament at that very seat? Nothing else makes sense. Nothing else makes sense in the slightest. It's the only explanation that makes any sense whatsoever.
Process a few thoughts and things. But so yeah, something significant did happen to change my mind, and I did do, and I think it's for the best, because I think I heard you just saying before I came on, 2 years. I think 2 years is a long time for me to be presenting a show on Talk TV and writing a column in the Daily Mail. And I'm an author, I publish a book a year, and to be an MP, come on, something's got to give. And I'm 66, and I've done, I keep saying this, and I've done, 18 years as an MP. And I did think I'd be retiring in 2 years, but this is kind of new life opening up in front of me, along with a granddaughter. And so there are just...
Yeah, see what I mean? Exactly. She already said right now that she's said there, I thought I was going to be there for 2 more years. It's clear that there has to be something very specific today when, it can't be the fucking Labour climate pledge stuff. It has to be the honest list, or it has to be Boris Johnson stepping down himself. There's no other potential for this. No other potential for this.
Other priorities and things to do. And I didn't want to cause a by-election, but I've got over myself, frankly, and it's time to do the right thing.
Nadine, did the Prime Minister go back on a promise to you? Were you promised a peerage? Did he revoke that peerage? Because, you've really done a 360 since 10 o'clock this morning. Something pretty dramatic must have happened to change your mind. You're a woman who's not for turning. We all know that. You're very trenchant in your views. You really stick to your causes. You're very loyal. My God, you're loyal. We've seen your extraordinary loyalty and steadfastness to Boris Johnson. You're not somebody who switches. You're not a vacillator. So at 10 o'clock this morning, you're not under any circumstances going to trigger a by-election. By 4 o'clock this afternoon, you're doing exactly that. Is it that Rishi Sunak let you down? Did he do an about turn?
I need to explain something to you, Vanessa. I'm not on any list of Rishi Sunaks. I'm on the list of Boris Johnson.
Yeah, we know.
A Prime Minister doesn't have the ability to change the list of a former Prime Minister. So the list that Boris had was agreed with Rishi, and that was done. Rishi does not have. Can you imagine that if Rishi said, "I'm not going to"? I'm so sorry, my phone keeps going. Can you imagine that if Rishi said,
"Professional outfit right now,"
to suddenly decided, "I'm going to remove somebody from Boris's list." Rishi has no idea who's going to be Prime Minister after him. He would be setting a precedent That has never been set before. No prime minister has ever done that to another prime minister. And he doesn't know who's going to come after him. And that person may...
Yeah, I mean, her phone must be going off, and Boris Johnson must be absolutely, wrunging her phone ragged today. There's nothing, again, there's no other explanation. And of course, she has appropriated the leftist audio. This is cultural appropriation. Well, as we text, don't say these things. Be very coy.
very well decided to remove people from his list. So a prime minister doesn't do that. They'd be very foolish. It'd be a very stupid and foolish prime minister who tampered with the list of a former prime minister because he'd end up not getting his own nomination through. So that doesn't...
So Rishi Sunak's not the catalyst, that's what you're saying. It's not because of something the Prime Minister's done or hasn't done. So if the Prime Minister doesn't have a power of veto over another outgoing Prime Minister's list, and you say he doesn't, who does? Is this one of these things where we're up against the blob? There's a big blob of civil servants who are saying Nadine Dorries may not be ennobled at this point. She's got to wait at least 2 years. And it's that kind of, the optics aren't good. We don't want Stanley Johnson to be given a knighthood. That's not good. He's Boris's dad. Nadine's got to sit tight for another 2 years. So's Alok Sharma. Is it the blob or is it an individual who's let you down in this way?
Vanessa, I'd love to tell you, and one day I will, but I can't today.
Exactly. It's no other explanation, right? If it was the blob, she'd fucking say. They love that shit, right? They love making up the mythical fifth column that doesn't exist, right? They love making up that shit. And if it was that, she would have said it instantaneously. The only reason why she's being coy and she's not saying anything, the only explanation is the fact that Boris has told her to specifically to ensure that he can make a run at Mid Bedfordshire. It's the only way. It's the only way it can possibly make any sense at all. Oh no, she's not trying to spin her ploy to get a peerage to Wolfie. My guess is she's standing down because she was told by Boris Johnson earlier today that he was resigning because he knows he's screwed over because of the Partygate hearings. So she's standing down so he can make a run in her constituency.
But something has changed. Something from when you woke up this morning to this afternoon, in between breakfast and afternoon tea, something or someone has changed your scenario, and you're saying it's not Rishi Sunak. So is it several people? Is it one person? It's not Boris Johnson, obviously, going back on his desire to ennoble you. We know not that.
I didn't say what you just said. What I said is that a sitting prime minister does not have the agency to change the list of a former prime minister. So that's what I said to you. He doesn't have the right to do that. So that was what I said.
You said at the beginning of the programme, because I said either we're celebrating with Nadine Dorries and we're saying, my lady, congratulations, or we're condoling with her. Has she decided to throw the towel in so dramatically, so spontaneously, so quickly, after 18 years of excellent service? Is it because she's...
Come on, Vanessa, right? You don't have to butter her up that much. I know it's your job to essentially run propaganda for the worst people in the country, but we all know that she's like an absolute fucking clown. You don't have to butter her up.
Furious. And you said at the very beginning of our conversation, I'm not angry. I don't do anger. That's not me. I'm not doing that. I'm not angry at all. So are you very disappointed? Are you sad? Are you distressed? What's happening? What are you feeling at this point?
Relief is what I'm feeling at this point, at this moment.
Why?
I'm feeling well, I think I've been carrying a degree of guilt since I stood down as Secretary of State. I think I possibly maybe should have stood down then. I know there are things that have happened in my party, and I said it on my own programme when I stood down as an MP, I'm not altogether comfortable with the way the party's conducted itself over the last year.
It's exactly the only thing that makes sense. I'm sorry, it literally is the only thing that makes sense, right? She's first of all talking about feeling guilty because she quit her cabinet position during the whole Boris Johnson Partygate stuff, right? She's talking about the issues with the way the party has run. What else can that possibly be other to a reference in the fact that she feels like Boris Johnson was mistreated in the party? It all adds up. It all makes sense. It all makes sense. Yeah, exactly. There's no other possible thing that she could be referring to here. Well, I mean, to be fair, loads of sitting MPs have their own shows on TV at this point. Quite frankly, it's ridiculous how many Conservative, soon-to-be ex-MPs are filling the airwaves on GB News and Talk TV, because it's the easiest way of being able to get free viewers for your propaganda wing. Just get well-known MPs who have existing followings and use them to be able to plug your own TV channel. I mean, it is question JDM, right? John Nicholson MP, who's an SNP MP, went to Ofcom to try and complain about the fact that GB News had Philip Davies interviewing other Tory MPs on a news programme, because you're not allowed to do that. News programmes cannot have MPs and interviewing existing MPs, but GB News argued they weren't a news show, so they fucking got away with it. So yeah, no, there has been scrutiny, but again, you have to, again, as we said before, JDM, people think that that there's somehow supposed to be rules in place, agreements on the way things should properly be conducted. There should be precedent. And what if we learned anything from the past 3 years of this absolute farce, then we can only conclude that these precedents don't exist. There's no agreements. There's no nothing. Everything is all about power, how much you'll be able to bend the rules to your own personal gain, and that's all it's ever been in politics. And anyone trying to doggedly play within the rules is a fucking clown, a fucking idiot, right? Leftoids in the Labour Party learning that right now. That we should have played dirty from the start rather than trying to play fair with people who hate us so much they never want us to have a position in a political life. No, we learned the hard way that there's that you have to play the game. And Boris is playing the game. Rees-Mogg's playing the game. Dorries is playing the game. And the only real victims, quite frankly, are the public, the people who believe that Boris Johnson is the new saviour, who have just been bought into his cult of personality that he's then milking for political, personal, monetary gain. There are no double standards because there aren't any standards at all. So true, so true. So true.
Yeah, I'm not happy with the events that took place removing Boris Johnson. And, you know, there are just things that I'm unhappy with. And so I feel a sense of relief. You know, I'm going to be presenting my programme on a Friday night. I'm going to be writing my column in the Daily Mail on a Tuesday. And I will do both of those things without this invisible cloak of guilt that I wear around my shoulders. When I'm doing that, I will do that now freely and enthusiastically without that guilt.
Do you think, and I'm all about empowered women who really do stand up for themselves and tell it like it is. Do you think that you deserved a peerage, and do you think that you had put the time in, you had done the job, you had walked the walk and not just talked the talk, really done the work, really put the work in, and that this is a pretty shabby state of affairs, Nadine? Do you think that you should be in the House of Lords? You would actually be a great asset to the House of Lords?
Well, I put it this way, Vanessa. I trained as a nurse and worked in the NHS for 10 years. I started my own business, ran a very successful business from an original idea without borrowing a penny from anybody, and sold it to a blue chip company, became a director of a blue chip company. I'm a successful author who sold 3 million books.
I know, I've already said so this afternoon. It's extraordinary. I know you are.
I've served as an MP for 18 years. I served as a health minister throughout COVID in the Department of Health, and I served as the Secretary of State. There are
Yeah, I don't think that you can really I presided over part of the health secretary when we let hundreds of thousands of people die due to COVID mismanagement, which is literally being an inquiry right now. I don't think that's something that I would add to my resume, quite frankly, Nadine.
many people sitting in the House of Lords who who do not have the background, the record of achievement that I have, but they did go to Oxford or Cambridge, and they do move in slightly different circles to me. And if you ask me, am I disappointed? I'm slightly disappointed that someone who's born, the streets I was born on is one of the poorest streets in Britain at the moment. In fact, I think my street, Breck Road, is actually at the lowest on the list of most socially deprived areas in the UK.
I really wish, right, we had proper working class representation in Parliament, right? People from working class backgrounds just weren't fucking clowns, right? People like her and Oliver Dowden, whatever it might be, right? Basically got Angela Rayner, like the singular MP from a genuinely working class background who I back. Although they're Mary Black as a guest as well. She's from a working class background too. It's so incredibly frustrating that we really do need more of them in Parliament. And Nadine Dorries, I guess, because she's been a cabinet member, is the highest profile one, and it's fucking Nadine Dorries.
It is unusual for someone from my background who was born to the degree of poverty that I was born into. I know this sounds like a trope, but I literally had to borrow shoes to go to school. But someone who was born into my background, is very rare for that person to be ennobled in the House of Lords. And I think one of the reasons why I've hung on was because I did think to myself, wouldn't that just be amazing? Because what it says to everybody from my background is, you could do that too. You could be a peer in the House of Lords. But I don't think it was to be. And I think the realization that I just didn't think it was going to be was something which kicked into my decision-making process today.
But isn't it extraordinary?
And there you go. Exactly. She's not trying to call out anybody. She's not showing that she's been slighted in some way. And she said it's not going to be. What else does that say to you other than I've made the executive decision myself to try and do some tactical thing for Boris Johnson? Simple as that. Simple as that.
That in this day and age, the Conservative Party, whoever's influential in this, you say it's not the Prime Minister, but whoever it is, did not see this. But Nadine did not see this as the most incredible opportunity to do precisely what you've just described and to ennoble a woman of such achievement from such a background and say, look at us, look at the Conservative Party. Nadine Dorries is somebody who has served us with inspiration and with flair, with loyalty, diligence,
Diligence. What the fuck are you smoking, Vanessa? Come on. And this is embarrassing. You're embarrassing yourself with this. All this praise heaped on one of the dumbest people in Parliament.
all the good stuff. And look, here she is in the House of Lords. Why would anybody of influence in the party not want those optics? Why would anyone not want to show that they've moved away from some kind of Oxbridge club and you know, and towards much more egalitarian, much more kind of diverse and much more...
Because the Tories don't believe in egalitarianism or diversity. What planet have you been living on, Vanessa? What the fuck? What, did you not know anything about these? I mean, clearly you don't, because you've described, you know, Nadine Dorries has been an excellent MP who's served with diligence for 18 years. You know, clearly you don't know anything. But come on, right? This is the basic of the Conservative Party, is they believe specifically in hierarchy, and the Oxbridge hierarchy trumps all, quite frankly.
kind of inclusive acknowledgement. Why wouldn't they embrace that opportunity? It seems remarkable that to hear you say what you've said.
Yeah, to be fair, this is really fun. This is some woke shit, right? This is some woke. This is specifically woke virtue signaling about wanting to have token working class representation, right? All you want to do is, it's just tokenism, it's woke tokenism. It's just virtue signaling and a box ticking exercise because you want to have maximum diversity. I can't believe Talk TV would be so woke, right? Look, clearly, if you want to talk about the optics, let's look at her popularity rating, which is -17, which isn't as bad as some public figures, but you know, it's hardly a show of strength of her popular position.
Yeah, I don't know what to say, really, Vanessa.
Again, and if she was really being slighted, she'd have something to say when she clearly knows that this is clearly calculated tactical.
I've only just made a decision just recently. They're literally an hour ago. And, you know, I haven't even spoken to my members of my family yet. And my phone is on fire at the moment with, there's a lot of thinking that I need to do through. And, but, you know, but I am in a place now of relief where I can move forward and do the other things that I've been doing without carrying the guilt that I was doing that as an MP as well.
I mean,
there you go. And that's if you ever needed any, you know, insight into the fact that this is clearly something tactical that she's done, right? You know, maybe I'm completely wrong, and there was some other massive bombshell that happened specifically today that she couldn't say earlier, but you know, theoretically might come out later. If there's some other bombshell that's happened today, then you know, maybe there's something else that's going on here, right? Maybe I'm wrong, but for me, everything just lines up from what she said, from the timing, all the things that have happened around it. Nothing else makes any sense whatsoever. I'm calling it, right? And you can roast me in the comments in future. You can roast me on Twitter saying, fucking, what did no justice? She was jumping to conclusions immediately after all of these resignations. But, you know, I just don't see any other possible reason. There's no other reason. Makes sense. And again, all of this hinges on the fact that, I mean, Peston was on Twitter. It's just been on Twitter right now, right? Peston is on Twitter at the moment saying that there's no chance of this happening because it would throw the Tories into chaos, right? Let's have a look at the tweet that he's just brought up here. Let me bring it up on screen for you folks. He said, after that resignation statement, there's no chance Johnson could stand in Dorries' vacant seat. Just trying for the seat would tear the Tories apart. Like, yeah, he spent his entire time tearing the Tories apart. From when he campaigned for Brexit against David Cameron's wishes to try and usurp him as party leader. From when he continued to do things outside of the norm and make all of the fall guys fell instead of him. From the Save Big Dog campaign, all that kind of malarkey from back during the pandemic. All the way through to the COVID inquiry, who's happy to hand over his WhatsApp messages to try and throw Rishi under the bus for Eat Out to help out. And what makes you think that he would care about destroying the party right now if it kept him in the Houses of Parliament? Do you think he gives an entire whole solitary shit about the potential for the Tories to be torn apart or not? If anything, he probably wants them to get torn apart so that he has a broken party of him to come to the rescue of and then be back in the top job again. Nothing else makes sense. This is delusional. Again, it's yet more liberal journalists somehow believing that that precedent is or some kind of normality should be in any way adhered to when we're not living in normal times. There is no precedent, there is no due process, no one cares about this shit, at least not Boris Johnson. Do you think of all the people to care about any amount of due process or party loyalty, think Boris Johnson cares about that? You live in a different planet, Peston. You live in a different, completely different world to the remainder of the population. You know nothing, Jon Snow. Yeah, journalists pretending that politics is real and not just a massive game being played by Oxbridge-educated elites, just like a game of chess, just moving the pieces around and trying to get checkmates. That's all it's ever fucking been. Yeah, Boris only cares if the party is loyal to him, and they've shown they haven't been, so he's lighting the touch paper to set the shit on fire. And, more power to him. Again, I'm glad that someone is just out and out, rather than this pretense, right, that everything is supposed to be based upon process and based upon some kind of set of rules that people should adhere to. That, that even the Labour right pretend exists, which we all on the Labour left, I guess the left of politics, I guess now at this point, we all know. No one has any scruples. It's all a game, and there's this kind of pretense that it isn't. That the Labour right try and push out. There's a reason why they're trying to do these things other than purging the left, for example. We know that it's not a real game. And everyone, all the liberals, all seem to think that that there's some kind of real thing going on at the top here. There's some real push-pull between ideologies and everyone believes the same shit at the top anyway. I'm glad that Boris Johnson, for all his faults, which he has plenty of them because he's completely unfit to hold office, let alone be fucking Prime Minister. What he did as Foreign Secretary, my God, what an international embarrassment the man is. But I'm glad that he is so completely Machiavellian. He's happy to set fire to the worst political party in the country, but essentially for his own ego. And I said, if anything, you have to admire it. You have to admire just how well he's managed to grift everybody. It's a work of art, it really is. If you enjoyed this video, please do consider liking and subscribing. It does help out the channel and the algorithm. And if you click the bell notification icon, it will let you know when I go live and when I upload videos. If you'd like to follow me on social media, my handle is @NoJusticeMTG, and that is Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitch, and YouTube. If you want to support my channel in a more financial manner, you can do so by becoming a member for just 99p, by super chatting, or by supporting me on Patreon, with the link is in the description of this video. And hopefully I'll catch you on the next segment.